What's next? What's next?
So got to Arizona, and at this point I had reached out to my ex's old roommate. And I told her she was in a sorority at Arizona, and so when I reached out to her, I asked her if she could meet up. So I got to her sorority house, and I couldn't find her. So I asked one of her sorority sisters if she could like text her and let her know that I'm at the house. So she's like, okay. So she shows up, we sit down together, and she said to me, she was like off rip. She was like, I know why you came here, but the thing is, she doesn't want anything to do with you, and she's already dating another guy. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, there goes all the time that I wasted on here. So after that happened, it was kind of just like even more of a downhill thing. Like any kind of idea of like getting a job or whatever went out the door, and I was just like getting fucked up as much as I could. So fast forward, I was going to a party one night, and I had blacked out from drinking, and I woke up in the lobby of her dorm where I basically used to live when I was dating her. Yeah. And a cop woke me up. So from what I remember, I basically had told the cop, he was like, "What are you doing here?" I was just like, "I don't know." He could smell the alcohol in my breath, and so, I was underage, and so he decided that he was going to arrest me, and he told me that, if I wasn't, a student, that he would charge me for trespassing, but he was going to leave it. So, but it also turns out that that wasn't exactly what happened. Like a couple of years ago when I was transferring over from the community college to FAU, I had to get the police report from then, and apparently what actually happened was that I was sitting there, and the cop asked me if I lived in that dorm, and I told him, I was like, yes, I do. And so we went into the elevator for the dorm room, and then I ended up pressing all of the buttons. You know how like kids will like slide their hands down to like make sure they hit every single button?
Like that scene in Elf.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's like a big Christmas tree.
Exactly. But I was just like so drunk that I wasn't thinking anything of it. So I guess I was just trying to fuck with the cop. So he did that, and I was like, oh, come on, bro. Like let's just get this over with. So whatever. He puts me in the cuffs and takes me to the Pima County Jail. And so when you're homeless, you're considered a flight risk. Because typically for something like that, you get an MIP or something like that. Just sit the ticket and, sign it off, whatever, pay it, and then you have to take a class. But because of the homelessness, I was admitted into like an actual like cell block and into the cells. So I was in jail for 5 days, and then finally like day 4, I had like 4 other roommates. Like when you go into the jail, into that cell block specifically, like you walk in, they have 2 doors, and then so you walk in, they close the door behind you, and then they open it up, and then you go in, and then they show you which cell that you're going to stay in. I like 4 other people.
Without trying to interrupt you, so it's actually like in the movies where like you walk in, you stop, they close the door.
Yeah, no, it's really funny actually, because I remember I was sitting in like the drunk tank or whatever, like right before I get like filed in or whatever, where they get your fingerprints and they take the mugshot. I remember sitting there because at this point I was like sobering up. It was probably like 6 a.m. There's no windows or anything. I couldn't see if it was daytime or anything like that. But I remember I like saw some dude walking, and he had these sick flip flops, and I was like, dude, those are tight. Like, and then fast forward like a couple of hours, like they have me in the back, and they're like, all right, like strip your clothes, bend over. They need to check if you're like trying to bring anything to the jail.
Oh.
And they kept the clothes, and then they handed me like that whole, like it was like an orange jumpsuit bullshit.
So you got the flip flops.
They gave me the flip flops. I was like, oh, it's real.
And you're like, oh man,
Right.
At least there's an upside.
I swear to God, I literally in my head I was like, okay, I'm going to a jail cell right now, but like
the flip
flops are fly. Those are sick, They're like orange and like transparent, like it's dope. It's not dope. So so I didn't know what to expect, Obviously you hear shit, like obviously again, privilege, so I was expecting like I got a baby face, like what's gonna happen? You know what I mean? Like
you about to be a bitch.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But when I got in there, like the cellmates that I did have, they were pretty chill. There was like 3 or 4 of them, and one of them was in there for credit card fraud. Another one was there for like aggravated assault or something like that. But it was like it was fine. Like it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Because I think what they did was they put you with people who were like
So,
equivalent to
Just
your-
like there's like
Jail-
level of crazy.
Jail and prison are two very
two
different
separate
things.
things. Yeah.
So I think jail is more short term.
It's gonna be- yeah, it is-
Prison.
it's- yeah.
Prison is more like long term, like actual like
Okay.
yeah.
kind of grotesque.
It's like the
offenses
pre.
and
I
stuff.
would get it was probably like the pre to like your actual sentencing and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
So-
what happened was, so I was asking myself, I was like, what do I do? Because I don't know what the fuck. I've never been to jail. You know what I mean? Like I've never even been like I've been pulled over, but that's as far as it goes. And so all my cellmates, they took a look at the paper that they give you, like what you're charged with, and they were like, yo, so just plead guilty, you'll be straight, you'll be out of here in no time. So on day 4, I had like a court date, but the court date, like you don't leave this like the jail. Like I just got pulled into a separate room, and it was like a webcam with a judge. And you're just supposed to be respectful and whatnot, and just like shut your mouth if it's not your turn. And then when you get there, you yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, whatever. It was like 3 minutes long, my actual sentencing. It was like quick. So then I went back to my cell, and I don't really remember if like how much longer I was there for like a lengthier period of time. But then it was either the following day or like maybe like 6 more hours of just waiting until finally I got released. And then after that, I was like, all right, like what the fuck am I doing? Like I should probably stop fucking around now. So a kid that I had like spent, that I knew, I was like, hey, can I use your email to like email my dad, just to like get the fuck out of here. And so I was going back and forth with my dad because again, I don't have an identification or anything like that, so I can't like get onto a plane. So the treatment center that still had all my stuff, they sent a picture to my dad, and my dad sent me the picture, and he sent me the plane ticket as well. So I had somebody take me from the University of Arizona to the Tucson airport, flew from there back to Salt Lake City, and then I got picked up by the treatment center again. And then I did treatment for another. At that point, I was like, all right, like I guess I'm in it now. Like I did what I needed to do, so I might as well just sit in it. And so I did that. It was like 3 months, and then this new kid came in, and he was from Minnesota, and me and him became super close. And then like, there's a lot of people like when you're in treatment that they say a lot of shit so that they get you to leave with them. And so like I knew a lot about this kid, and he was like, yeah, semi-professional snowboarder or whatever, and
That's sick.
And so he was like, yeah, and I was like, oh, that's dope. And he was like, yeah, if you want, like, well, if we leave or whatever, me and you, we can, like, I got you on a job, like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, whatever. And we were talking about it. Till finally there was a day where he was just, like, really reckless. Like, he was a kid. He was 17. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, I was only, like, 3 years older than him. Yeah. And so he got kicked out because he was putting his pubes in the water. Like the fountain water, like the water that we had in the kitchen or whatever, he just did that, and so they like
Wait,
kicked
hold
him
on.
out.
So you had like communal water that everybody took from?
So in the kitchen there was like a thing that they filled up. Like there was water fountains there, but there was also like where they fill up in the kitchen when you like go for snack. There was a time period at night where you go for snack or whatever,
Okay.
or like in the morning you have the different times of like breakfast. Like females would have breakfast at this time while we had smoke time, where we can go smoke cigs, and then it would switch. They would have smoke time while we were doing meds and getting like our breakfast. And so at some point in time, he put his pubes in the water, and so he got kicked out for that. And when I heard that he was getting kicked out, I was like, oh no, that's my only. We were talking about all this shit. Like I need to leave too. So I ended up leaving again, and so
So how long is the treatment normally supposed to be?
it's supposed to be 90 days. But also like the treatment center that I was at, like it's all like kind of based on the person and like what the clinical team thinks is a good time frame for them to see if they see any progression or whatever. It's really hard for me to like distinct what their actual goal was, because there was some therapy that was very good, but also at the same time my mental health was deteriorating being in this place. Because again, like I never experienced this kind of shit before.
Yeah.
So like the people that I was like interacting with, like like people who do meth, heroin, just have all these like really intense drug habits, and I'm just there because I couldn't control my emotions.
Yeah, you're just kind of like in the minor league.
Right, and
Yeah,
so
it's
like it was just like a lot of it. They had like you had to, when you're at treatment, you had at this specific treatment you had phases. So each phase you had different like responsibilities and like abilities to like, what's the word? It's just like phase 2, for example, if you start off phase 0, then you work your way at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. At phase 2, you're able to leave on the weekends and go to the mall with staff. And then phase 3, you can go to the mall by yourself without staff. But again, you have to be back at the treatment center or whatever. So like, they're privileges. You get different privileges for each one.
Okay.
When you're a phase 3, you have the ability to meet with the clinical team because every Thursday or Wednesday, you have to like propose to phase up. So it was just like really toxic because like if the clients didn't like you, if the phase 3s didn't like you, they would have influence over if you were moving up or not. So there was like some sort of like hierarchy that goes along with it.
So they could kind of keep you there
If they wanted to.
indefinitely?
Yeah. Like no one was like I don't think anyone was like actively trying to keep you from progressing to the transitional living, which was like a halfway house
Yeah.
with the same company. But it was still like very like a lot of these people were like still children in their own heads because there was like it was like a lot of it was like a whose dick is bigger contest, like because it was just bad. Anyways, so the kid from Minnesota, he left, and so I left with him, and then we ended up going to a Walmart because he was like getting in contact with his friend from Minnesota who was going to come pick us up, blah blah blah. And so after he got in contact with him, it was going to be like another like 20 hours, something like that, for his friend to drive from Minnesota to Utah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So we were at the Walmart and we were trying to like figure out where we're going to stay for the night. And so we ended up going inside and like, trying to talk to someone, be like one of the managers, like, can we stay here or whatever? They're like, no, you can't. So we decided to go on the side of the Walmart, and then we like, they have these little, what are they called? They're like pallets, the wooden pallets, and we
Yeah.
built like a little fort kind of thing.
Okay.
And then this other kid, he had some money, so he bought air duster from the Walmart. And so we were outside, like we were 3 kids. And so one of the kids was like, okay, like we have weed, we're going to smoke that. So the 2 of them went off. And then this other kid, we were sitting there and he was like, hey, you ever done air duster before? And I was like, what the no, I haven't fucking done air duster. And so I was like, I didn't even know you could fucking get fucked up all that. So he was like, yeah. So like, let's try it. So he showed me like, he like inhaled it, held it in, and then he like blacked out. I was like, oh shit, that sounds fun. So I did that. Whatever. Next morning, I was like, I don't want to fucking do this shit anymore. Like, I'm just going to go back. Like, let me know when you're back in Minnesota. So I go back. I finish the treatment. I move over to the transitional living, the halfway house. And so I'm doing that for a while. I'm doing really well. I'm like getting a job and whatever. And so, but eventually I was like sick and tired of it. I was already over it completely because I fucking hated every second of it. The kid from Minnesota hits me up. He goes, hey man, you still want to move to Minnesota with me? We can live together. I'll get you a job, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, let's go. So he drives from Minnesota, comes to get me with his girlfriend and his other friend. They pick me up and we go to Colorado, and then we go to Minnesota. So when we get to Minnesota, it's like kind of complicated. Basically, it's his girlfriend's mom who has a house. And in the house, the girlfriend, she basically was like, yeah, my mom says you can live with us and that's fine. And on top of that, she's letting you use this car. It was like a Cadillac, one of the SUVs. She just gave me it to use. But obviously, it comes with certain responsibilities or whatever.
Yeah.
But so she had, the girlfriend of that kid, they have like an older sister. She has an older sister and 2 little brothers. And so throughout this time, I'm basically taking care of the 2 little brothers because the mom is living with her boyfriend and she's working and whatnot.
So
And
no one lived at the house. It was just the
nobody
kids?
lived. It was the kids would go back and forth between the mom and like the mom's house and the dad's house. But when they were at the mom's house, there wasn't really any food.
Okay.
So like whatever money I did have, I would like eat, like feed them and whatnot because I was using the car.
Mm-hmm.
So and don't get me wrong, she was super nice because she would like give me money too to fill up the tank or whatever. Yeah. The kid that I moved with, he was telling me about this like group that like they like call themselves the fam. They're like, he called them that or whatever, and he was like, stay the fuck away from them. They're just like bad news. They were just like a bunch of kids who like to get fucked up and like throw parties and like sell drugs and guns, all that type of shit.
Yeah.
So me and the kid had a falling out. I don't remember exactly what happened, but we just had a falling out. But this house basically turned into a trap house. People would be coming in and out of it, like we'd be throwing parties and whatnot. And I remember one night we threw a party and this kid had almost gotten beat to death because it wasn't even a kid, it was like some 35-year-old, and we just like were throwing, like nobody knew who he was. So these kids just like came up on him and they were like, okay, we're gonna beat the shit out of him because he grabbed my shirt. So there was one particular day where I think we were like making jokes or something like that, and they were talking about how they have brands, all of them, and so I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm not a pussy, so like I'm down. And like, yeah, like you should get one. So
Oh, I thought you meant clothing brands.
No, no,
for a
no.
second. I was like, what?
No.
Immediately,
They all have brands?
I knew because I've seen it, so I knew that's where this was going.
Yeah. So they were like, okay, like we all have one. So like, what do you want yours to be? And I was like, I want mine to be an M. And so they were like, okay. So they heated up a knife, like one of those like tactical knives.
Yeah.
They heated it up, and then originally I was like, okay, dude, you need to like make sure. Like I was like stupid because this dude was like on perks or something like that, some sort of like downer drug. So he was like heating up the knife, and I was like, make sure you keep the thin edge because otherwise it's gonna look stupid. So he did it, and then immediately he fucked up. He put the flat part of the blade right over here.
Oh God.
And he was like, oh, dude, I could just do the thin part of it for the rest of it. And I was like, no, that'll look stupid. So just, like, fix it. So we put
You
the
had
solid
to
part.
fix it.
Yeah. So he, like, turned it sideways and then did the thinner parts on these two, like, edges.
Yeah.
And then on the last one, I was like, all right, you're just going to have to, like, stick with it. Like, you committed on the first one. Like, to make it less stupid, you're going to have to,
So you had to
blend it out.
you had to be branded basically four times.
Yeah.
Now, how painful was that?
So it's funny too because when I was living in this trap house, like I was making sure that I didn't touch any drugs because I knew that if I was gonna be able to get home, like back to Florida, I need to make sure that I don't have any drugs in my system because I was gonna have to go back to a halfway house or something along the lines of that. I
Yeah.
just knew because that was the only way. So I just stuck to drinking. I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna drink. I'm gonna stay away from other drugs, whatever. And this was like the night after we had all been drinking or whatever, and so I went to go get alcohol before we did it, and we had none, absolutely none. So I still went through with it without drinking anything, so I was sober. It hurt more to hear than it actually did,
Yeah.
and it sounds weird, but like it was just like the concept of like hearing skin on like fire pretty much was just like a lot worse than it was. It hurt a lot, don't get me wrong, but like it hurt less than I thought it was gonna hurt. Yeah,
It's interesting.
it's weird. I have a fucked up brain. It's just, that's the only thing I can think of.
Wait,
but
why
yeah.
did you choose an M though?
My last name starts with an M.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Should have put one and one together.
yeah.
That's on me.
That's all right. Don't worry. But yeah, so that's how I got that brand. And so after a while of like living in this area, I got a job working as like a chef or a bar or whatever, but I was getting paid under the table and whatnot. But I ended up contacting my parents, and they were like, yeah, like we can. They came to visit actually the day after I got the brand, and so after they came to visit, like we went jet skiing too. And so like I had to like make sure that they didn't see anything. So I like had a put the vest on without them being in the same room, and whatnot, and because I knew that if my mom saw it, like she would freak the fuck out because she hates tattoos. Imagine if she saw a fucking brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she'd lose her fucking mind. And they were already like on the verge of disowning me. You know what I mean? So I like told them that I was still sober or whatever, like I wasn't drinking or anything and I wasn't doing drugs. So they were like, okay, we'll figure something out. And then they went back to Florida. And then they contacted me and they were like, okay, like we'll have your educational consultant, basically a person who's been helping them throughout this entire process, like coping with the entire situation of me doing what I'm doing. And then just like how to handle whatever decision that I made. They were like, okay, you're going to talk to her and then we'll figure it out from there. We'll bring you back home or whatever. So I talked to her. She gave the okay. And so after that, I came back to Florida and I lived in a halfway house. And from then on, I was just like, okay, like I'm kind of over everything. Like I just want to move on past this. So there was a point in time where I was like, okay, like I can handle drinking clearly. Well, not clearly, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I like told myself, I was like, okay, I can handle it. So I was like planning like after the halfway house to like drink. But But then there was like a period in time where I had like a meeting that didn't go so well with like one of the advisors or something like that for the halfway house. And so I was like, you know what, fuck this. Like, I'm just going to stay sober to prove her wrong. Because she said that if I didn't go to like these meetings that I was going to end up like going back to it and getting fucked up or whatever. So I was like, fuck this lady. I'm going to stay sober without the meetings. I don't, just to prove her wrong. And so I finished there. I moved in with this kid in the apartment complex, and some other shit had gone down, but that doesn't really matter for now. It could be for another time. But that's pretty much like the general concept of the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's quite the journey,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say like humbling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was definitely like an experience.
Wait, so
Yeah.
actually, I was actually waiting on the part where you would say she was right and you didn't manage to do it. But so that's what
You want to know something very funny? You
Yeah.
want to know? Okay. I was working at the job that we all work
Yeah.
at, and I was at the
The
front desk.
establishment.
Yeah, the establishment.
Yeah.
So I was at the front desk, and some kids came up to the desk, and they were like, "Hey, can we have some water?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, sure." And so I went to get some water. I was standing there, and the kids were asking me, and before I went to get the water, this lady walks up with another lady, and she was like, "Do you remember me?"
Oh.
And I was like,
Oh.
fuck. I was like, because there's like so many people
Yeah,
that come
yeah.
in and out, you know what I mean? So like, there's
Yeah.
someone has to like make an impact, kind of like,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't fucking remember this person. And you feel shitty when you don't remember somebody, you know what I mean? Like, if they're like, obviously you had a
Yeah.
good contact with them if they're telling you,
Yeah.
do you remember me? So I was like, give me 1 second, let me go get the water. I walk over, I was like, I can't figure out where I know this lady from. She didn't look familiar or anything like that. And so I grab the waters, I bring them over, and then she says the name of the halfway house that I lived at. And I was like, how the fuck do you know that? And she was like, don't you remember the meeting that we had?
Is she the one that pissed
She
you
was the
off?
one who literally like spent the entire meeting just telling my parents that I was gonna go back to doing drugs and drinking. And she was also supposed to get me a job at a resort, like a high-end resort.
Okay.
And so I was like standing there and I was like, holy fuck. Like, this is
Wow.
crazy.
So I mean, kind of like in a way that like that was a moment for you. You probably
Yeah,
felt
it
like
was insane.
It was a win.
I told my parents right afterwards because it was literally what I was doing to like basically spit in her face, because she didn't do shit. She just like told my parents that I was fucked.
Well, did it work?
What do you
I
mean?
mean,
Did you tell her that you were still?
Yeah,
she-
no, I was
she
I
could
was
probably
so
just
happy.
see-
She I
probably
mean,
saw him.
yeah,
Like,
she
Yeah.
seen me like like obviously I'm doing.
You
well
were
if I'm
put
behind.
together,
Yeah.
and you were like, obviously you're not gonna be working that job if you don't have your shit together. And
Yeah.
she sees that makes me happy actually.
That's actually.
It was a great feeling, and then on top, it was so funny too because she was like, "Yeah, I left the treatment, whatever." By the way, they shut down like a couple of years afterwards, like the CFO or something like that. Like ended up doing drugs again. He had to go back to treatment and
Wow.
everything. That's what usually happens with these places, man.
like the
they're
people
either-
in charge.
Yeah, the people who like created it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that whole thing is like a separate entity on its own, just because of how fucked that whole situation is.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the client's end, but also on the people who are like trying to help people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Delray is like the capital in the world for like people trying to get sober.
Yeah, I heard.
And
about
like,
that.
dude, I know so many people who like I'm like I think the only reason that I like made it through that whole thing was just because I have the understanding of like, okay, like there's bigger and better things, but like if I touched heroin, there's no doubt in my mind that I literally I would either be dead, like in prison, like,
Or in a treatment center.
yeah, literally. Like, and the majority of people that I met in treatment, there was like their 5th, 6th time coming back to the same place.
Wow.
Yeah, dude, it's a whole
That's
fucked
crazy.
situation. But whatever.
So
I don't.
What I'm wondering though is, because I was still waiting on kind of like how do I say this, like a moment where you kind of like just snap out of it and you're like, you know what, fuck it, this is what I'm doing, I'm sticking to it. But I get that you kind of said that when you said, hey, all right, I'm gonna prove her wrong. But is it just like, is that what it was? You just said, hey, you put your mind to it, and just kind of like over time you got used to it? Or I don't know, like you just, once you said that was it, you managed to stick to it? Or were there like temptations along the way, just like
Oh, there's 100. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, because okay, so I feel like I don't associate with addicts, but I also don't associate with normal people
Okay.
because I feel like there's this like I'm in this limbo of that because there's again like I decided to move into like a house with people who are in a fraternity, and then someone else who's like who's super popular, and everyone who's just like drinking. People were at the house constantly drinking, smoking, like. But I put myself in these positions to like expose myself to like prove to myself that I don't need like I don't want to do that. Not even that, but just like being able to be around it and not have that urge to like want to do it.
Mm.
Kind of like a strengthening thing.
In a way, I guess. I mean, I just like I just wanted to feel normal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my entire life, and me having to be in these positions of like being sober or whatever makes me feel not normal. So if like I'm able to be sober while being around people who do normal shit like drink or
Yeah.
smoke, then like
Well, I was
then
gonna
can
say
normal.
like that's kind of the reason why a lot of people do end up drinking and smoking because they want to feel normal because that's what everybody else is
Yeah.
doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? To share in those experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
Experiences and stuff. I mean that's kind of why I did it at the
Mhm.
time. You know, but
Right.
didn't really work out that well for me.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, I thought you were saying the opposite because you know how like you don't drink either. So
No,
I thought you
I
were
don't.
talking about that.
I don't drink or smoke. I don't touch the devil's nectar or the devil's lettuce.
Right.
Yeah.
Either one.
Okay, that's one way to put it. is there like a crazy story behind yours too, or was it more like?
There was one time that was like, I don't want to say it was crazy, but so when I started smoking weed, it was like it took me a few times to get high. It took me
Mm.
around 4 times,
Right.
I think it was. And believe it or not, I would do it when my parents weren't home. So like my parents would go away for the weekend, and then I would invite a few friends over
I mean, I could believe that
without them knowing. Well, yeah, I mean, but they would like go away on the weekend, and then I would be like, okay, well, like this is the perfect opportunity. So
Open crib.
yeah, I
Dude,
would.
yeah,
I would
I did that
invite,
shit all the time too. Like,
but I
it was
kept it to
common.
like 4 people in total,
Okay.
including me.
Which is smart, because
Yeah.
normally people will be like, okay, like let's invite a fuck ton of people, and
Yeah.
they don't give a fuck about your
They
house. They're
always
gonna
ended
fuck
up
that
trashing the house, and I spent the entire next day cleaning it and making it spotless.
Even with
With
4
4
people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
4 people, dude. They literally raided my pantry and like,
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
took everything out. Tried cooking like 6 different things and just abandoned it. And like, but from my parents' perspective, like they knew that I had my one friend over, and like he was just gonna come over and we were gonna play
Okay.
Xbox together. And I was
Did
'cause
they did they catch the house being that dirty?
No,
Oh,
never.
okay.
They have no recollection of this. So, mom and dad, if you're watching, that's some news for you.
Wow. They're probably
Anywho,
gonna see this too.
So, I would spend the whole next day cleaning and stuff, and to their knowledge, nothing would have happened. Like, they're
Right.
like, oh my god, Seth, like, nice job cleaning up the house. Like, you did such a good job staying home alone. I'll do it again next time. And I was like, bet.
It'd be like you eat a lot of food.
Yeah.
Our son's
Well,
growing.
they knew my one friend was there too, so they
Okay.
were like, whatever. And they left me money for
He
like
eats
pizza.
for 2.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was like all 4 dudes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but all
would
4 people
assume
spent one night and they left in the morning. It really wasn't
Okay.
a big deal. But so I smoked every once in a while, and the first time that I actually got high, I kind of got frustrated, and I was like, yo, like I want to get high. Like everybody else is getting high. Like let me
Right.
do it. I was like, I want to make sure that I'm gonna get high. So I took 5 Jeebs out of a smart water bottle, and I smoked 2 joints.
Dude,
Now-
you gave him that look like, oh man.
Well, 'cause Jeeves-
and then I'm just
Yeah,
still
you-
trying
I-
to like
I
figure
knew
out what
you
he's
didn't
talking
understand.
about.
Jeebs fuck
yeah.
you up. So
Gravity bomb.
For-
Why don't you go ahead and
for someone who's a lightweight, considering that was my 4th time,
Okay.
that's a lot.
yeah.
That's a
it's
good amount.
decent amount.
So I ended up greening out, like hard, and I ended up like freaking out,
Right.
right? And then I was gonna go to bed, and I went upstairs and I laid down, and that's when I left my friends downstairs, and they were trying to cook shit, and then they ordered pizza, and we all went to the door and we're like, yo, who ordered pizza? But anywho, then I was fine after that, and it just kind of came into this like repetition of like I would smoke, I would have a panic attack, and then I'd be fine, and I'd be like a little bit high, and at the time I didn't know that they were panic attacks, so I went to the movies this one time, and I met a few friends there, and actually I was seeing Big Hero 6. I remember that vividly, and my friend brought a blunt, right, and.
Right.
We were all smoking beforehand. We went into the woods next to the movie theater because, you know, we're not going to smoke a blunt in the parking lot, like, that open and stuff. And I remember I took 2 hits because I didn't want to get too high, and I wanted to enjoy the movie, and I was like, yeah, like let's go. So we're walking in, and I'm like starting to feel it and stuff, getting a little cotton mouth, and we walk in, everything goes fine. Sit down in the movie theater, we're having a great time, and I remember that the Annie commercial came on, and that was the time when the Annie movie was coming out, and she said like, "It's a hard knock life."
Is that the bald one?
Not the bald one, the redhead.
Are you 50 years old? Because that movie, was there like a remake or?
There was a remake.
Okay,
I'm pretty
okay.
sure. Or like,
But
I'm pretty sure there was a remake, but there was a trailer for it, and I remember her saying, "It's a hard."
It could be
knock
one of those
life."
like theater, like you know how like they play the
Yeah,
like,
how they
plays.
bring them
they
back
bring
for
them-
like
Yeah.
2
something
showings.
like that. Yeah.
I'm pretty positive it was a remake, but during the trailer, she said it's a hard knock life, you know, like in the song,
Right.
and then all of a sudden I felt like I was in like a free fall, like you know that feeling when you're falling.
Yeah.
I felt like that, and like everything felt like it was moving up, and I was like, okay, this is weird, and I started to feel like really dizzy and kind of like not woozy, but just strange, and I was like, okay, this is not fun. I'm not enjoying this even in the slightest. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go sit on the bench right outside of the theater, like right outside of the door entering the theater, and so I sat down, and I'm sitting there for 5, maybe 10 minutes. And I was telling myself, I'm like, all right, if it doesn't go away in X amount of time, I'm going to just go lay down in the car. So it didn't go away, so I went into the car, and I laid down. I called my buddy, and I was like, yo, like, I'm, like, kind of geeking out right now. Like, am I dying? And he's like, no, you're fine. I was like, no, like, I feel like I'm dying. I was like, I think I'm going to call my mom. And he's like, no, don't do that. Then you're going to get caught. Don't do it. And I was like, okay, fine. So I stayed in the car the entirety of the movie, and the whole time I'm staring up at the ceiling of my car, and all I can see is like space, like you know those like nebulas that you see and stuff, like all the colors in space. That's all I could see. That's all I saw when I looked up at the top of my car. So I'm like there like tripping out, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then I was able to like kind of like calm myself down a little bit, and I just kind of waited it out, and I'm like sitting there in my car, and I started like watching a little like Netflix on my phone and stuff, and I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna wait for my friends to come out and then I'll be okay. And then just out of nowhere, my friends just opened up the car door, and they're like, yo, you good? And I was like, yeah. I was like, of course, I'm fine. And then I get in the car to drive away. I start up the car, and all of a sudden my nose starts just absolutely gushing blood, and I'm like, oh my god. So I get out of the car, and I'm sitting there squatting down, just letting it pour out. Big puddle of blood afterwards, and I was like, that's terrifying.
That's a weird. Was it laced? Do you think it was laced?
I have no idea, but nobody else had any adverse effects.
Right.
So everyone else had a great time. I was the only one that had a fucking shit time. So I was like, that's scary. That like the bloody nose kind of scared me a little bit. But then I drove them to Acme, and then I drove home. And I dropped them off, and I went to my buddy's house, and I ripped his bong, and like not the same thing happened again, but I freaked out again. And I'm like, all right,
That's it.
I'm done. Like
That's it.
this is dumb. Like
This is
if I'm
not for me.
yeah, if I was like, I'd be stupid to continue to doing this because literally I'm putting myself through this terrible experience every single time. And then continuing after that, even after I stopped smoking, I started getting panic attacks. And again, I didn't know that they were panic attacks. I just started to feel like really shitty and like really nervous. And I didn't put one and one together that they were panic attacks. And eventually someone was like, yo, it might be a panic attack. And I was like, all right. So then they started getting worse and worse, and it was every day that I was having a panic attack, sometimes at night when I was trying to fall asleep, and it was like really consistent. And it got to the point where like I told my parents, and I was like, look, like I'm having these panic attacks and they're not stopping, and like it's becoming like a real problem. And I started seeing a therapist, and then he helped me learn how to like cope with it and like kind of source where it's coming from and stuff. And I mean, I kind of attribute me smoking weed to bringing out the panic attacks. I don't know if that's even a thing, but that's kind of what triggered it.
Thing. Yeah.
And then I started to, that's when I actually found out that I was depressed for like 2 years. And then I got on some medication, and then a few years later I was able to like wean off of it. But I mean, that was just a terrible experience with that. And then I decided to start drinking while I was on the medication, and I don't think that was a good idea because
Not.
That's like
Doctors highly
That's
recommend-
like
don't
the
recommend
one thing
go against
I
that,
know
yeah.
that much. You don't
Yeah.
drink and be on your meds. Like I know that.
so then it became every time I drank, I started to get this like weird kind of woozy, kind of like head spacey feeling, and now every time that I drink, I get that same feeling, and it's terrible, and I
Well,
hate it.
because
So-
also drugs and like alcohol can trigger if you have certain like a history of like for example bipolar. Some people I know some people who like they stop drinking and then they start drinking again and then it triggers bipolar disorder. Like
Yeah.
it's what happened to one of these kids that I do know. He like had we lived together in a halfway house and then he like stayed sober and then after he stayed sober he was like I'm gonna go back to drinking. He started drinking again, bipolar. And he had to like get onto like bipolar medication because of his decision to start drinking again. He had that history.
Well,
do you think I'm bipolar?
a little bit. Nah, it's all making
Yeah.
sense now. Oh, this was awesome.
So what you're saying, if I were to start drinking again, then
I mean,
Okay.
it's
He's not-
only
he's-
it's
he's
only
saying it's a possibility.
it's not only if you have like a history of certain and it's only specific like you'd have to like do more
Yeah.
research on it. But there's like specific kinds where like certain things can activate. If you start smoking weed, it can activate this disorder and whatnot.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like schizophrenia was another one
Damn.
that can be activated by weed. I'm pretty sure. So like
We'd have
yeah.
to do like a
I guess I
whole
dodged a
like
bullet.
That's
But,
I mean that's a
a
whole
whole, yeah, like-
other topic.
It
to, like,
was-
discuss.
Just not fun for me. So then I decided like, okay, like neither of them are for me, and I figure if I can't handle weed, then why would I try anything else? So I never tried anything else.
I feel like I just
So that's kind of why I'm sober. It's down to like personal preference at this point.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to geek out every time I smoke or
Yeah.
feel like shit every time I drink. So
I feel like I just learned so much from like just this episode alone. Just I don't think I've done it to you per se, Daniel, but I know I've done it to you. Or like at maybe when we first started hanging out, like yo, take a shot, bro. Come on, like yo, just this one time, come on. Like
Yeah.
and I know like other people do it too, and I feel like I might have done it to other people. Now like
Yeah.
after hearing you guys, I feel like I'm gonna be more kind of like keep that in my mind next time. Like I have like another friend that maybe says they don't drink or whatever.
Well-
I'll keep that in mind before like trying to like push because we all do it. Like maybe not you guys because you've been
yeah,
through some
no, it's fine.
to experience it. But I feel like for anyone that doesn't know, you go out with your buddies, you're just and they don't drink. You're gonna try to like, come on, one shot, here and they're not knowing. But I'm definitely gonna keep that in mind now. Like
Yeah.
maybe there's a reason why they don't want to.
Honestly, like whenever people offer it to me, I don't take it as like, because people are like scared
Yeah.
when they offer or whatever. Like sometimes like my friends will forget. Like
Yeah.
some people like that I hang out with frequently or like whatever. They'll be like, oh like do you want to? If I'm like sitting around, and they're like smoking. They'll be like, oh you want? And I'm like, oh shit, I'm really sorry about that. I'm like, no dude, it's cool. I appreciate the offer
Yeah.
because like then in my head I'm like, oh I'm normal. Like they think
Yeah.
I'm just a normal kid.
Yeah.
So, but like I don't know. Like one quick thing too. Like my friends are like huge. Like, so I mean I want to be able to like say one last thing too. Like about there was a few people who were like there through like everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually want to like be able to like shout them out. Like
Oh, yeah,
they're
for
gonna
sure.
watch it.
Let's do.
Well, obviously I want to like my parents are like a huge deal to me.
Yo, shout out to your parents
Yeah,
for that.
they
disowning
really
you.
put up with a lot of shit. And so my friend Anthony Sean, who like he was like there for me, like literally like I had a lot of people leave me like throughout that whole process. Anthony Sean and my friend Raquel Rayton, we don't really talk anymore, but she was also a reason that my parents were able to like be okay.
Yeah.
And then my roommate in college, Alex Newman, who was like huge help as well. And then Jenna Hunter was actually the roommate of my ex or whatever, but she like when the times that I was like at Arizona, she was like there as well. I text them every year that I'm sober and I tell them like, hey, like this is another year, like, and it's because of you know what I mean? And so, yeah.
Shout
and
out to those people. man.
yeah, I mean, it was like they're just like a huge part of like who I am today, and it's just like I literally don't know where I'd be without them. Yeah, I mean, and thank you guys for like having me and like letting me talk about like all
Yeah,
this
of
shit. You know
course.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And like honestly, like people like going through whatever it is, like it doesn't matter. I think one of the biggest issues that people have is the fact of like, oh, my issue isn't as bad as whatever, you know. So like if I'm talking to someone, the first thing that I hear is like, hey, like, you know, I didn't go through what you went through, but I'm still, you know. And I tell people all the time, like, it doesn't matter what it is. Your problems are your problems for a reason, and it's valid for you to feel shitty. Like, don't let anybody tell you that. Like, and I promise you, like, if you stick through shit, like, you'll be okay at some point in time. If you just, like, actively try your best to be yourself, accept yourself, that's, like, the biggest part of being able to, like, be okay and be happy. So, but yeah, thank you guys. Like,
That was a very powerful message right there,
That's
man.
great.
I think I got chills. Well, I think that'll be it for
Yeah.
today's episode.
I'm incredibly impressed that you were able to overcome that, because that was a lot.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean, and
It's-
it's not an easy feat to do that.
yeah.
You know,
And I mean, I've told the story so many times at this point that like it doesn't seem like
Yeah.
anything to me, but
Yeah.
it's definitely not the normal. But again, man, like in comparison to this, like some people like,
Yeah.
crazy. They have
Some
crazier
people don't
stories
make
than
it
I
out,
do. Yeah,
you know?
that, but also they have like crazier stories than me and shit that they've been through. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
they started off in poverty or like with nothing, and
Yeah.
they stay with nothing and then make it or something like that. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we do want to thank you for being here, man.
Yeah,
Thank
We
you guys.
appreciate
so much, man.
you trusting us with this,
Yeah.
opening up to us, and sharing the story with everyone, our listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up for today's episode. And wow, I just learned so much, man.
Yeah.
All right, so we thank everyone for tuning in another episode of So What's Next, the podcast, and we'll catch everyone in the next episode.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.